Okay. All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to my session and Matt's session. I have 50 slides of goodness for you guys today. Hey. All right. So we are going to be talking about some of the Azure core products. Okay. I'm going to move through them quite quickly so that I can get through all of them because there are a lot. If there's anything that you have a question on in the middle of it, just put up your hand, jump up and down.
And they're gone.
Wait, what?
There was sand in the sea that got taken out.
All right, cool. Okay, here we go. Oh, hello. Okay. On.
Data.
Check how cool that slide is.
So it's not hotspot.
Means absolutely nothing. It just looks pretty cool, right?
No hotspot.
So, those are all the cool things that are available in Azure. I just like a nice wallpaper looking thing, I think. Digital twin, orchestrator, DevOps, haptics, all that kind of stuff is all in here. And there's another one.
We've lost connection on next machine, so we're just reconnecting.
Okay, right. Let's do a dive. Some of the Azure products. All of these are, believe it or not, categories. So there is stuff underneath each one of these. So if we go and we take a quick dive into AI and machine learning, you'll see some of the stuff that's available with regards to AI and machine learning. We've got our cognitive services, we've got our speech APIs, we've got machine learning, we've got bot services. Bot services are really cool. Has anybody used bot services yet? Cool. Okay. Again, a lot of these applications are available via API, right? So you can interact with a lot of these things programmatically through some sort of a REST API. So when it comes to the machine learning, it's obviously using some of the hyperscale capability that's inside of Azure. Come on. Cool. Right. After machine learning, we have analytics. Analytics is a huge part of Azure and has gained a lot of momentum. I've done a couple of deployments for analytics where in certain types of organizations we've got compliance and all those kinds of things. Luckily, Microsoft abides by most of those compliance certifications, so you can be sure that those guys are going to hit the tick box when it comes to some of those architectures that you do. Something that's really cool is Azure Analysis Services. Hey? Azure Analysis Services. Say that 10 times fast. You see, I've always used to say Azure Analytics Service.
Because you've never done SQL. Like,
oh, shush.
Yeah. Analysis service.
An analysis service.
Analysis.
That connects to what?
What?
What does it connect to?
To what?
The analysis service.
Which one?
This one.
I don't know. You're talking about
It's testing you, you know. Okay, so what does Azure an analysis service connect to? Well, it's cool. Sorry? And not just the data warehouse. It can connect to a whole bunch of them, which is great as well. So it can connect to SQLDB. It can connect to managed instance. I mean, obviously, if you have a managed instance with a private IP, make sure that you have a gateway. There is a gateway that does it. You know, very similar to your sort of Power BI as well. Power BI will need a gateway, or your data factory will need a gateway, which is something that's really cool here as well. Data factory, to move information from your on-prem or from another environment inside of Azure works incredibly well. And it supports a lot of services. It supports a lot of sources as well. So you've also got your HD Insights for your Hadoop and your big data type workloads. And we've got Databricks as well, which leverages Apache Spark for analytics as well. And then, like really one of the things I think I've used the most here, Event Hubs. You can push literally almost anything to Event Hubs. It's great. It's great for monitoring, all those lovely things. Like for instance, if you let's say need monitoring on your entire Azure estate with regards to your application insights for your app services, you can push all of that stuff to Event Hubs. And it's really not that expensive either. I mean, like they bill you in the billions. It's like, 1 billion queries for like $5 a month. And then obviously there's a throughput that you would then use. So when it comes to Event Hubs, they give you what they call a unit, and the throughput unit is equivalent to, I always get this the wrong way around, it's either 2 meg inbound and 1 meg outbound. if I remember correctly, or it's the other way around. And then you can just increase those transactional units. So if you get 10 units, you'll have 10 meg per second or whatever the case is. Now, you must remember those are really, really small packets. So there's a good chance you can just flatten millions and millions of requests in there. Okay. Let's look at compute. Okay. Compute is divided up into a couple of different categories because a lot of people, as soon as they hear the word compute, they automatically gravitate to computer, which means they gravitate towards virtual machine, right? But a lot of this stuff is serverless, right? Which it's still compute, but it's not a computer. So it's not a virtual machine necessarily. So you'll see that some things here are functions, for instance. Has anybody used Azure Functions? Nobody else? Okay. Functions are really cool. They allow you to perform certain workflows and tasks inside of Azure, and they'll sit on a normal app service plan. So you've got two ways of going through with functions with regards to payment. You've got a consumption plan, you've got an app service plan. App service plan, you know, is predictable. It'll never go up or down. It's what you chose, that's how much compute you've got. Whereas the consumption plan will start scaling. And then what will happen is you'll pay more based on usage. So I would always put app service plan first before you've tried and tested it. Otherwise, it's going to run costs. We've obviously got the buzzword, the new thing. Everybody loves a bit of Kubernetes. So Kubernetes gained a lot of momentum in the past.
I went for a smoke and I could hear Kubernetes. I could smell the bullshit.
No, I shouted it. Okay. Yes, there's been some updates to the whole Kubernetes side of things. They've actually done it twice in the past couple of months, where they've gone and deprecated old versions of Kubernetes. So if you are running, it was Kubernetes 1.10 is being deprecated in October. Now they've gone and said 1.11 and 1.12 are also being deprecated.
That's the 17th time this week that you've mentioned.
Yes, correct. Different crowd though. Who's heard that before? There we go.
Who was here on Tuesday?
There you go. Cool. Container instances, which is great. And something else that's just come out now is container instances for app services, which is pretty cool as well. So instead of you having to manage a container with something like Kubernetes or use Azure to maintain the container and then do all the ingress and egress and all the port forwarding and stuff, you can go and spin up an app service that uses a container. So you can use your Docker image or however you've built it, but then use it behind an app service and Azure takes care of the rest for you. So also really, really cool. Your virtual machines are in there. Everybody knows what a virtual machine is. You got virtual machine scale sets there, which are great, provided you have the right type of workload. Your workload must support scale sets.
So can I just ask, everyone in the room, he's dropped some crazy terminology here. How many of you actually understand what he's talking about? He talked about Kubernetes and containers, so it's sort of a prefix to that, especially the people in Cape Town as well, we want to know. And then you talked about scale sets, which is, that blows my hair back. But do people know what scale sets are though?
Yeah, no hands in Cape Town.
All right, so what are Kubernetes?
Everybody's being shy.
But for the sake of everyone in the room, explain what Kubernetes is, what Docker containers are.
But then
2 seconds. What is a Kubernetes? Kubernetes like Falconetti, right? So Kubernetes, like sheep, there's no singular.
We'll never get through all the slides then.
All right. So just explain what Kubernetes is, quickly.
Kubernetes is an orchestration platform for containers. Okay, so, wait, I'll get there.
Okay.
Hey, I'll get there. Okay. Kubernetes is maintained by which company? Guess. Google, that's right, yes. So, Kubernetes in Azure is a managed service, which is pretty rad, that they don't charge you for, right? So what happens is you can deploy a Kubernetes service.
We want to know what Kubernetes
I'm getting there. Inside of Azure, and what it does is it deploys what they call a master plane, okay, where your master node is. This guy tells all the other computers in the cluster what to do, right? And then what happens is your code will run in what they call a container. Everybody know what a container is? What's a container?
Okay, let me simplify this. Kubernetes manages containers in Azure, all right? Containers are self-service, self-contained components like the bar of the jar of sweets, same thing, right? That's it. Okay, moving on to scale sets.
It's an old app that spins up and down based on usage. Right?
Well, it can be anything really. Whatever you
That's
put
right.
in a container, Kubernetes manages what's in the
The
container.
function is the smaller piece of it. That's just literally like a line of code that's spins up.
If you spin up a function in a container, you can spin up a VM in a container. It doesn't really matter. You can
No, you
put
can't.
anything in the jar.
Other way around.
Huh?
Other way
Yeah,
around.
anything in the jar.
You can spin a container up in a VM.
Yeah. So you can manage anything that's in the jar. So if you put Fizz's suites in the jar, you can put it into multiple jars at the same time. And if you change the flavor of the Fizz's suite, you can deploy that flavor to the other jars using Kubernetes. All right. Scale sets.
So Kubernetes is the jar manager.
Yes, there we go.
The cupboard. The
Jar
cupboard.
is in,
And,
but
and
no.
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but basically, if you put your stuff into a jar, and develop it in that way, which is cloud native, you can then take that jar and move it around easier.
Yeah, we
That's
don't
right.
discriminate against jars.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yes.
Scale sets.
Scale sets.
Virtual machines that
Yes.
Literally, virtual
That's
machines
exactly
that
what
go
happens.
brrr.
Yeah, that's exactly what happens. Think of them as dominoes.
It goes, but you have to make the sound brrr. Yeah, you can create a template and yeah. Yes, ma'am.
But I think the important thing to also remember about scaling is sort of scaling down as well, not just scaling up because it's based on usage.
Yes.
And if the usage is, the traffic is high, then you scale up and add more VMs. And if the usage is not that high, then you can not use so much.
Yes.
So scaling up, scaling down based on usage
Right.
is where scale sets come into its own, and you can literally spin up 1,000 virtual machines in 5 minutes.
Yes.
Power.
End of story.
Carry on. I'll step out.
That's good. Thank you. You just made that slide 10 more minutes longer.
But everyone now understands what you're talking about. Big difference.
All right. Databases. Who knows what a database is? Jeez, guys, I know you do. You guys are all lying. You guys, every single one of you is lying. I bet you all know exactly what a database is.
Where the jars are, you put stuff in the cupboard.
Yes. It's the cupboard for jars.
And then a jar.
No, a database would contain all the suites that you put into the jars.
And it will define them. It will tell you that it's a first suite.
Yeah.
And it's me.
And there will
Yes.
and there will be a list on the door of the cupboard, so you can find exactly where this
Okay.
certain type of suite
We're
is.
digressing and this is
Okay,
all
so
this-
let's think about anybody have any questions on any of these?
What is Redis cache? Just remember.
Okay, cool. So Redis cache is pretty much exactly what it says. It's a cache, right? So when you think about how databases, relational databases work and redundancy, so you've got multiple versions of your data sitting in different places. They obviously have to sync up. So what happens is while they're doing all the nitty-gritty in the background trying to sync their data, what Redis can do is Redis can store those commits that are coming from your application and then sort of wait for the database to catch up and then fire those off. So it increases performance when it comes to some of your database access. Okay. Also with specific types of regions and all that. So if you also have to look at, let's say, Cosmos DB, right? So Cosmos DB also supports Mongo language, so Mongo database. Now, Mongo is a non-relational database, right? So
like NoSQL.
like NoSQL, correct. So it's a non-relational database, and Cosmos works very, very similarly. Now, the cool thing about Cosmos is actually globally distributed. You can use it anywhere on the planet. It'll push your data wherever it needs to go, provided you've partitioned your data correctly as far as the database is concerned. Yes.
So this is the question. You guys know why Cosmos DB will never go down?
Because it's everywhere.
Azure physically runs on Cosmos. So it's the database engine that is used for, and it's actually in the write-up it says it's a planetary scale. So it's scale.
Yeah, because it's everywhere.
The interesting point is that actually Azure runs on Cosmos as the database provider. That's why.
So we've just been told by one of the experts in the room, he's usually regarded as the official heckler, the real Francois Pinard, that Azure runs on Cosmos because it's interplanetary available.
But that's what it says.
Yeah. So if you go back in time, Cosmos is there. All right, carry on.
Which is great. That's great. Actually, that's great insight. That's cool. I like that. So yes, again, Cosmos DB unfortunately is incredibly expensive. So if you haven't written your database queries cleverly and you haven't used the correct sort of partitioning keys that return sort of more results. So like, when you do a select statement, for instance, you select a whole bunch of data and you don't filter it. You're increasing the number of RUs you use, and as a result, you get charged more. So you should be very careful with doing that. Okay, right. Again, we've got MySQL, we've got Postgres as well, which are also available as a service. So you don't have to worry about the machines that they run on, they'll deploy them for you, yeah?
With the third one, is that a type of SQL Server on virtual?
Yeah, it is. Okay. It's just SQL Server on virtual machines, yeah.
And then the second one, the last one with the SQL Server stretched database.
Yes.
What is that?
That is cool. Okay, so SQL Server 2016 and up has the ability to share a database across itself and Azure. Right. So what happens is SQL Server intelligently takes some of the data that's not being used anymore, shifts it to Azure. So it stretches it to Azure. So the database is shared between the two locations so that you can move all the old data into the cloud.
Does it have to be in the same region or is it different zone?
No, so it'll be either over a gateway or a site-to-site or a ExpressRoute.
So it's like always on is with availability groups.
Yeah, except the one sitting in Azure.
Steroids.
Yeah, the one sitting in
So
Azure.
it's supersized.
Yeah. Okay, then we get to the point, developers. How many developers in the room? Geez, you guys know everything today. Okay? No developers. Okay, I think we should have...
Yes!
No, anyway. So some of the developer services that are available in Azure. Now, the reason I'm taking so long here is because there are over 500 updates to Azure per year. Okay? So Microsoft is releasing almost 2 updates a day when it comes to Azure and some of the stuff that they're launching. And these are some of the things that you see. So you'll see, we'll get into my session a little bit later, we'll get into some of the stuff, like if you look at the command line interface, so the CLI, where you can manage Azure from a terminal so that you don't have to worry about using the portal, and you can script a lot of the stuff, automate, yeah.
Is there anything you can install to use it with CLI?
Just the CLI itself. Okay. All right. Then we've got Azure DevOps. Who knows what DevOps is? Yes, right. Good. Okay. CI/CD. What does CI stand for?
Continuous integration.
Yes. And what does CD stand for? Correct. Okay. So Azure DevOps is awesome when it comes to this kind of stuff. It will deploy anything whenever you want, however you want. It just works from wherever you want. You can put stuff in GitHub anywhere you want.
Can we just qualify the statement? It doesn't just work. Right, so for everyone that's not in the room, that's in Cape Town, when Warren says it just works,
There's a wizard in everything.
it doesn't just work. Nothing just works.
It does.
No,
It does.
everything fails somewhere.
It does.
So
Okay. Anyway.
please don't take this as the gospel truth.
Anyway. Okay. Anybody know what a YAML is?
What?
So the animals spelled differently.
Yes.
It's yet another markup language.
Yes. Yet another markup language. So a lot of your pipelines and your Kubernetes configurations are written in YAML. Anyway, I digress. We've also got Visual Studio Code, which I'm sure most of you use. At least for a text editor, right? Because it's really cool.
Well, it is the largest used editor in the world.
I just wanted to find out, you mentioned that it's written in YAML. Is there option to also write it in JSON?
For a DevOps pipeline?
Yes.
It's a good question. I don't think so. I don't think so.
Okay, you're burning daylight.
Yes, I know. All right. Then we've got identity, Azure Active Directory, B2C, multi-factor authentication. Right? Everybody know these terms. Question.
So with regards to identity, what opportunity do you have control over what services do you give them access to?
I would say it spans. So you would use identity across security and compliance. So it would form the foundation. So when you look at,
I didn't hear the question properly. Could you repeat?
Yes, we can repeat. Sure. Yeah. Do you want to shout it? Shout it.
I was asking if identity is referring to
Security.
Yeah, security within the team or even at an individual level. And the next question was just going to be, is it not better to do it as a group as opposed to individually? Because when you start changing permissions, then you're looking at it from a group level.
Yes.
And who gets which permissions.
Correct. Okay, so did you hear that, Matt?
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. You want me to take it or are you going to take it?
You can take it. I'm happy with that.
Okay, yeah, so if you know Active Directory or Windows Active Directory services, it's pretty much the same thing, but different because it's on a global scale. And the principles that you use on premises in Active Directory, you want to keep the same in cloud. So you want, whatever your governance and your security model is on premises, you can use in cloud. So grouping objects, grouping identities is a good idea, and it works much the same way. You can even synchronize your Active Directory from on premises to the cloud, to Azure Active Directory. It's not stretching your Active Directory, it's a synchronization, making a duplicate of your objects essentially in Azure Active Directory. That cool?
Yeah.
Explain multi-factor authentication.
Yeah. So
it's the irritating thing that sends you a damn SMS every time you want to log on.
An SMS? No, we don't want the SMS. But anyway, yeah, that's a good example. The multi-factor. So an authentication mechanism would be, an example would be a password or a PIN or an SMS code that you get sent from the server. So an SMS is a server originated PIN essentially. So multi-factor authentication is a security mechanism that wants you to prove you are who you say you are, either by supplying something that you are, something that you know, or something that you have. So in most cases, people have the Microsoft Authenticator app on their phone. And so that is something that they have. They know the password initially. That's the one factor. The second factor is the device that they have. And often the third factor is a biometric. So you put your fingerprint on your phone or you enter a PIN. So that's multi-factor. There's even going so far as to removing password as an authentication mechanism, where you can have passwordless sign-in, where you have to use one or more than one of the other factors and not the password, because the password is seen as the weakest factor for authentication.
Cool. Everybody happy with authentication? At least identity. Cool. I mean, I think it's something that we need to be mindful of when it comes to software as a service, platform as a service. What's happening is a lot of these services are available on the internet, right? That's what they're designed for. Okay, so the old way of putting these things behind some really big firewall and letting the security center handle all the alerts and the guys with firewall rules and packet inspection, those days are gone. So as a result, how to secure your application is via identity. Okay, it's no longer that perimeter security type sort of thing. Okay, right, integration, we've got logic apps, service bus, API management, and event grid. API management is really cool. So you can take all of the applications that you have across your estate, and you can take all of the endpoints that they have available and publish them through one endpoint. And it's globally redundant, right? So again, Azure's giving you the ability to make your applications run globally. So they can run in one little place, but then all those endpoints will be available everywhere else. Okay, so not too much there for us to go through in depth. The Internet of Things. Who knows what the Internet of Things is?
IoT. Yeah.
It's got a network point or USB. Any hardware thing that can talk.
So look, when it says here, bring IoT to any device, any platform without changing your infrastructure. Essentially what's happening is Azure is becoming this hub, okay, or central place for you to aggregate all of that data. So you've got things like device twin, which is also really cool, which allows you to, I don't know, you could send commands to, like I've got something on my desk at work, right, which is a self-contained greenhouse, about this big, right? And what happens is it's got a fan, it's got a pump, and it's got lights, you know, UV lights, grow lights, right? And every single one of those components is controlled by Azure IoT Hub. It says that every 48 hours, it should trigger the water pump so that my plants will water themselves.
So
right?
it will grow sativa or indica strains, no problem.
Yeah. They're about this big.
Oh,
That's so cute. Anyway,
Just bear in mind on the IoT side of things, in the world that we live in today, you get to talk to devices like Alexa and Cortana. If you are talking to Cortana, you now have Alexa and Cortana enabled true wireless earbuds. And then you get casinos in Vegas that replace their pool pump with an IoT pool pump, and the casino gets that.
And that is the reason why we use Azure Sphere.
So be wary of when you start looking at all these really cool IoT things. Amazon's always listening, and it can be hacked. Security is paramount when plugging things onto your environment.
Okay, management tools. I'm not going to get too much into this now because I've got a full session on it later. So I'm going to skip the slide for now. But when you guys come back at 11, I will go through all of these in depth. Okay. Media, when it comes to CDNs or content delivery networks. So Azure will make sure that your media streaming happens as quickly as possible, as closest where the person is. Okay. So they will do encoding, they will do streaming, all of that lovely stuff. So, you know, if you want to start your own YouTube, you can do it in Azure. Okay.
They've actually got something like Twitch, or Microsoft has got it, and they've actually just got Ninja, the Fortnite guy, to move across to their streaming channel from Twitch. I forget the name.
Mixer, yeah, it's Mixer.
That's right. You can see it's a gamer in the room.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Okay, right. Then we've got migration. Okay. Matt, do you want to take this slide?
Yeah, we can. So migration, if you've got on-premises infrastructure and you want to migrate it to the cloud or to Azure, there's Azure Migrate, which is a cool tool it'll help you identify systems that are ready to be migrated because they tick all the tick boxes that you need to migrate a system, and you can migrate servers as they are. So we call it a lift and shift. So basically a VM that you have in your Hyper-V or your VMware system on premises, it will be identified through an agent using Azure Migrate that it can be migrated. And once you've identified a system or a group of systems that can migrate, you simply push one button and it migrates them. But it does some replication under the hood. And site recovery is what it's based on. So ASR, which is Azure Site Recovery, is essentially agents that run on your on-premise systems replicates the data, keeps the data in sync, so that you can either fail over in a disaster recovery situation or migrate. So site recovery can be used as a migration tool as well. So these are tools that are there for free, and site recovery is free for the first 30 days. So you can do an entire migration within 30 days for free. The database migration service I can't really speak to, but maybe Warren, you can speak to that more.
Yeah, and DataBox.
So just some declarative statements. It's not as easy as just deploying the stuff, clicking a button, and it will replicate to the cloud.
It actually is.
It's not.
It is.
Your network infrastructure is not built correctly in the cloud. Is it going to work? No. So there's a lot of planning up front before you just next, complete, man the job. All right, so make sure that there's effective planning, because ASR is not just going to magically do stuff. There is no unicorn, there is no ninja dust. Also, something to take into consideration, VMware is officially supported in Azure. So if you're a VMware customer, you don't have to go to VMware's cloud, which runs on top of AWS, or move your stuff to AWS. You can run VMware in Azure. And we've got a lot of customers out there that run VMware. And to do a conversion to Hyper-V, that just scares the daylights out of me. I had other choice words. But yes, please, when you start looking at migrating workloads to Azure, VMs, virtual machines in particular, understand that there's a lot of planning and preparation that goes into it. Even Microsoft knows this. That's why they bought Movere. So you can go out there and get Unified Cloud and some of the other ones. What are the other ones? Assessment tools for
Movere, which Microsoft just bought.
Microsoft just bought. They've also got
Cloudamize.
There's Cloudamize. There's
Ergonomic
tools out there that you should invest in, not just using the Azure Migrate service there to go identify what you can.
Big Titan is also another tool.
But BitTitan, does BitTitan do Azure workloads?
Yeah, it's migration.
Yeah. I know that there's some stuff going on with BitTitan right now. There's some shit going on with BitTitan right now. They've been dropped by someone.
Or bought by someone.
No, they haven't been bought. They've been dropped by someone because another provider that does similar things to BitTitan has picked up all that work. So be careful. Go look at what's happening in the news about these.
Just wait for Movere to be integrated into Migrate, you'll be sure.
Okay.
Right, DataBox. DataBox is really cool. So DataBox is an appliance, a physical appliance that Microsoft will ship you that will connect to your tenant so that you can ingest data. So let's say you've got 100 billion terabytes or whatever the case may be, and you need to get it into Azure. Yeah, it probably works out to a zettabyte. No, I'm kidding.
100 billion terabytes. That's like the entire internet.
The entire internet. But anyway, so let's say your connectivity is bad. Let's say you don't have the right, you're like in a remote location or whatever the case is, but you need to get the stuff into Azure. You pop it onto a data box, and the data box you will then ship back to Microsoft, and they'll just upload the data for you.
So they'll bring it, we used to call it a data trolley because it fits in a trolley. They'll bring it to your building.
Yeah, but they do. They've got the trolley still.
They've still got the trolley on
It's
the
like,
building.
yeah, it's like 100 petabytes.
And plug the cable in and switch it on for you. You're not allowed to. And in South Africa, we're hoping that armor car heists are not the same, so they're going to steal your data box. Only in South Africa, we have load shedding and data box theft.
Yeah.
But the data box itself is encrypted.
Yes.
So once the data is on the data box, it's encrypted. So somebody, doing
but then they can format it and use it as a media server.
Or sell the tin, right? Like we sell copper. That's what we do, right? We steal copper and we burn it down. Sell copper. They'll go sell the tin like everything else.
Okay, cool. We've got mobile, where we've got Azure Maps. Azure Maps is like Google Maps. You can plug into it and you can use it for your workloads that require location services. We also have Xamarin. Anybody know what Xamarin is? There we go. So Xamarin is pretty cool because it does all the platforms. So you can use Xamarin to develop for iOS and Android.
That broad statement, it does all the platforms. It doesn't really do it.
I didn't say all platforms. I said cross-platform.
You said all platforms.
I said cross-platform.
I will play back the recording.
Didn't I say cross-platform?
No. All
Okay, I meant cross-platform. Okay.
Including BlackBerry, right?
Cross-platform. Okay. Notification hubs, which allows you to send push notifications, like the multi-factor ones, like WhatsApp, all those kinds of things. I think notification hubs, Microsoft statistics, what were they? I think they sent something like 3 trillion messages a day or something like that. It was silly. It was like a lot. Then we've got networking, and here I can take some of this, but I know that Matt is itching to talk about ExpressRoute.
So just to qualify this, always another rule of thumb, make sure you architect your networking up front, because retroly going back in to change things doesn't always work. And we've personally experienced this.
It's a disaster.
It is a disaster.
Especially when you use a Meraki. Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
Use direct peering as well?
Sorry? Direct?
Direct peering.
Well, peering is via ExpressRoute. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, go for it. All yours, Matt.
Are you going to carry on with more slides after? Because I've got a few slides on a different deck. So I'm going to talk.
That's hilarious.
So do you want to do ExpressRoute at the end?
Yeah, I'll just do an overview of networking when you're done. We're
Cool.
basically describing products in Azure. And then
Cool.
we'll go-
Now he's on slide 22 or 50, mate. The chances of you slipping your slides in there, you're more going to slip and slide than slip in your slide.
Okay. All right. Just some cool things about Azure. I thought I'd throw them in.
Skip.
No?
Skip.
You don't like
You
it?
can get the slide. Skip.
Okay. Data center security,
Skip.
compliance certifications.
These slides will be available for you.
Yeah.
immediately.
Okay, last one's storage. Yes, unlimited storage, as long as you pay for it. Different types of storage: fast storage, slow storage, queue storage, archive storage, hot storage, cold storage. Azure has it all.
Lake storage.
Yes, lake storage. And all accessible via a multi-platform or cross-platform Azure Storage Explorer, so that you can access your blobs anywhere you want. Any questions on storage? I mean, it's self-explanatory. You can get to it from anywhere. It's really quick. Yeah.
With regards to storage, cold storage, what is the SLA agreement type for that?
As far as I know, they're all similar, the SLAs. It's just the cost and speed. Okay.
You know, the best in the SLAs is really just check on there's an SLA page.
Yeah.
And fundamentally how it works is when you're combining different services, you get your SLA.
Yeah.
If you just look at one SLA,
Just repeat the question.
combine.
Okay, no.
Yeah. Okay. Did you guys get that question?
Yeah. It's a late.
Cool. All right. Then finally, web apps, Azure Search, content delivery service, all that lovely stuff. I would say web apps is probably the one that everybody knows the most of. You can do a Linux app, you can do a web app. It's pretty much self-explanatory. Full platform as a service, scales up, scales down, scales out. You can have deployment slots, which is really, really great, where you can do live production testing. It integrates into Azure DevOps. It's incredibly cheap when it comes to running some of those workloads. You can also restrict access to it via IP address. If you want, you can enable advanced threat protection on your Azure tenant, and you can monitor those app services as well. You've got custom domains, certificate management. So anything that you could think of from a robust website hosting technology is all there as well. Okay. And I think I'm going to end there. Matt?
That's me.
That doesn't say Matthew Levy.
No. Mind that. Okay, so Twitter handles aside. So Nick and Alistair and Warren as well covered most of this stuff anyway. So I don't want to repeat the networking portion, but I'm going to talk about some of the networking stuff. And as Alistair said, you need to plan your network in Azure as you would your network in a data center. So it doesn't just happen magically that you have a network. It's very simple and very easy to create networks, but you need to plan it and do the same kind of network planning that you would on premises. So IP addressing, virtual networks, subnets, that kind of thing. Anyway, so I'm going to talk about the virtual network, and I'm going to talk about the ExpressRoute a little bit, because I just want to highlight how one connects to the Microsoft network. So Nick and Alistair spoke about regions, availability zones, and geography, and this slide illustrates it nicely. So South Africa has got 2 regions, South Africa North, South Africa West, and the geography is Africa, not South Africa, and a geography is normally a geopolitical area. So it can be a continent or it can be a country. So it's going to be interesting when certain regulations apply to South Africa only, because this geo or geography is for Africa. So it's things that we need to consider in terms of compliance and regulation later on when things come down to South Africa. Like a GDPR is for Europe, and there's a geo, a European geo, not a Great Britain geo, for example. So things that we would have to consider. So this is the cool bit. So Microsoft's global WAN is, as Nick mentioned, lots and lots of fiber, and Microsoft have invested a lot into their global network, and it's one of the biggest networks. And Microsoft want you to use their network for traffic. So the blue in this slide is that global network, okay? And the little blocks are the regions. So we've got South Africa North, South Africa West, and those are separate regions. And you deploy things into regions, but before you do that, you need a virtual network. So you would have your network deployed in a region, and VNets are region specific. Later on, you'll see that you can connect VNets together with VNet peering across regions, but that's something else for later on. Thanks, Nick. So the red network is the internet, okay? So customers mostly connect to Azure over the red network, which is public network, public internet. So your ISPs and, your ISPs essentially. So you can consume Azure over the public internet, no problem, because you will get onto the blue global network as quickly as possible. This is just going into what you would have in an Azure region. So you have public services. So public services are your PaaS, platform as a service kind of things that have public internet addresses, public IPs, that are managed by the platform. You don't own those IP addresses. They're Microsoft IP addresses, but you can utilize them to access your services or platforms. Then you've got private services.
Sorry, Matt,
Yeah.
just also bear in mind, as of today, in today's world, there are certain services that are available in Johannesburg's Azure data center. Those services are not available in Cape Town yet. The Cape Town is largely still DR. So when Matt talks about services that are being spun up and what you can do, be very wary about where you're going to spin it up. So if your customer is in Cape Town, chances are there's going to be services that need to run in Johannesburg exclusively until it gets rolled up in Cape Town.
Is there somewhere where it actually lists what services are available in Johannesburg and Cape Town?
I don't know. That's a good question.
There is.
Okay.
Forget what it's called, but it's like the roadmap, but it's the Azure availability page, and it gives little dots and represents in different colors or dot colors where things are available and where they're not. Or
We can find the URL and then put it in the chat.
Yeah, we'll find the URL and put it in the chat. Okay.
All right, perfect.
So, sorry, I was speaking about private services. Private services are things that you are going to deploy in a virtual network, a VNet. So virtual machines, essentially. And you may want them to remain private, in which case you won't have any public IP addresses. So this is where your network planning has to come in. So you think of it as an empty rack With top-of-rack switches, you have to do subnetting your address spaces, you plan your address spaces, and you use private IP address ranges. Okay, Azure provides an internet gateway should you wish to publish anything externally using public IP addresses. So the internet gateway is part of the platform, and again, it's IP addresses that are owned by Microsoft, public IPs. You don't have any control of them, but you can utilize them using DNS, etc. Okay, the VPN gateway is another platform managed object. So Azure manages that VPN gateway, but you configure it, and that allows you to connect to it using other services, for example, something from on-premises. So how it looks, if you zoom out and you've got multiple regions, you've got a VNet per region, you've got app services, you've got private services, and you've got that blue global backbone to connect them all together. Okay, so that's essentially the essentials or the fundamentals of the networking within Azure. What Azure offers, and this is what we call the onion ring, or the onion, it's the rings of protection coming from the right-hand side, the internet inbound. You've got DDoS protection, endpoints being like a WAF. Everybody know what a WAF is?
No.
No?
My kids do a lot of WAFing.
They do? Okay. And it's not something you have with ice cream. It's a web application firewall. Okay, so it's essentially it's a proxy or a reverse proxy. So those would be on your endpoints. Then you've got virtual network isolation. So you have your VNets, you isolate your VNets with security groups, and that's the next layer, which is NSGs. And there's now also application security groups. So you can group services or VMs, for example, into a group, and you give it a name, and then you can create rules in your NSGs. So an NSG is like a firewall, and you create the rules that apply to those groups. Whereas NSGs by default are IP based. So you would say, okay, this VM has an IP address of 10.0.1.2, for example. That you historically you would create a rule with that IP address. Now with application security groups, all of your domain controllers, for example, into a domain controller group, and have the rules apply to all your domain controllers, whatever they are, app servers, web servers, etc. Okay, so that's NSGs and application security groups. And then you've got virtual appliances, which are appliances that you can purchase from the marketplace and deploy into your system. And there's a number of top virtual appliances, Kemp, Cisco, F5. There's a myriad of them. Okay, I'm going to move on. DDoS protection, we just spoke about it. Kind of it's doing intelligent protection against DDoS, distributed denial of service. So I'm rushing through these slides. This is just illustrating DDoS protection. Web application firewall, I spoke about it, but it's essentially a reverse proxy or publishing on SSL, mostly for HTTP traffic, HTTPS.
Just bear in mind that everything uses TLS today, so make sure that when you start spinning up certs and stuff that you adhere to TLS. I mean, SSL is there, but I mean, there's certain things that it doesn't do, and they're going to give you grief about it.
What's TLS?
It's the replacement for SSL.
Transport layer security. Okay, so this slide just gives you an illustration of an NSG, network security group, and the application security groups, which I spoke about, would be like, for example, the second row from the bottom has got storage. You can have something that is grouped as storage, so that you don't have to have specific IPs or, okay, storage, maybe not a good example, but database servers, for example. Okay. Skip through that one quickly. Okay, so the ExpressRoute is what I wanted to speak about quickly. So going back to this global picture, as an enterprise, if you're consuming Azure networking over the public internet, you are using best effort service. So you might have really fast internet, but you can't predict that you'll have fast internet tomorrow or in 2 weeks' time, because you're at the mercy of your internet service provider and what other people are using on that same service. So you're sharing a service, it's public, so you don't have the predictability. So what ExpressRoute does is Microsoft have edge routers at various POPs or what does POP stand for, Nick? Point of presence, thank you. And you can have a physical connection with your ISP into that physical router that Microsoft have provided. So there's they call it an interconnect, and your carrier, being your ISP, will provide you with a layer 2 or layer 3 connection to that physical router. Okay, so you're not now your route is not going from your on-premises network or wherever you are to Azure via the red public internet. You're going via a dedicated physical network. So you pay for the physical link, but you are guaranteed a connection. And Microsoft provide you with 2 connections all the time. Whether you use the 2 is up to you, but Microsoft, when you request an ExpressRoute, you get 2 connections. So it's dedicated bandwidth and predictable latency. So
37 seconds to go, Matt. Come on.
Okay, we got a question here.
If you get 2 connections, are they basically off, or they're coming by the same?
No, 2 physical ports.
The
Same port.
same port.
Yeah, 2 physical ports.
Onto those edge routers, yeah. So I don't know if you heard that. The question is, if you get the 2 connections from Microsoft, are they 2 physical parts? And the answer is no, they're 2 physical ports, but the same path. Okay, that's essentially ExpressRoute. I'll hand over to you, Al.
I don't have much to say, Matt. You've pretty much covered everything. But yes, so when we start talking about ExpressRoute, it costs money. There's only a handful of providers that provide you with that service. So if you want a direct line, ExpressRoute would be the way to go if you're worried about public traffic versus encrypted public traffic versus encrypted private traffic. Have a look at ExpressRoute. All right, so we're going to break for 15 minutes. There's great food outside, and when we come back, we're going to have Glenn and Thomas talk about, what are you talking about?
Solutions in Azure.
Solutions in Azure, yes, that's the next one. All right, 15 minutes.
Cool.